Okay, good evening. It's 6:01 p.m. on February 7th. We'll call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Education. Please silence your electronic devices and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You want to go right into it? Yeah. So we're going to go right into a special presentation that we have this evening, recognizing Mr. Brandon Herwick.
Big crowd. Not at all surprised. Anybody who has ever had the privilege of seeing Brandon work in his classroom, I shouldn't say that. Anyone who's ever seen Brandon play in his classroom and inspire a love of physical activity and learning, and it's a lot more than physical activity, would know why he's receiving this award, or anyone who has had the privilege of having their children have Brandon as a teacher. He exudes this level of joy and energy that is unmatched. And I would like to welcome Joanne Saborn from the New York State Association for Health, PE, Recreation, and Dance to come up and please tell us a little bit more about this award. Okay, I'd like to welcome Sandy Morley to the podium, whose credentials are long, but she'll tell us a little bit more about the award. Sandy.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Morley, and Brian just mentioned the association's name is New York State Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. A lot of letters, but it's a lot of members with a lot of energy. They're physical education and health educators all over New York State. And this is the association has really been responsible for creating the original standards for health and physical education and family consumer science and doing the updates in the past couple of years. So they're very active with state ed. I'm a retired middle school principal, so I've had the pleasure of working with Brian many years ago, with Jean many years ago, and it's kind of like old home week here because I know a lot of Brandon's colleagues are here and also people that I've run into. So thank you for having us. We're here tonight to recognize Brandon, and I met Brandon through New York State AFERD many years ago. He was still working down in Brooklyn, and he wanted very much to come up to the Capital District. And at that time, I was working in Bethlehem, and boy, I would have given anything to have him come to Bethlehem or send him to Guilderland. And nobody had openings, but you did, and you're very fortunate to have hired him in 2014. Brandon's been a real gift to his students at A.W. Becker and to his colleagues, not only in New York State, but throughout the country. And he shares his brilliant knowledge and motivation with other professionals. In his own words, he speaks and writes about behavior and kindness and effort that he expects from his students, but it's all in a reflection of his own personality and interpersonal skills. He just doesn't teach students, he guides them to develop their own moral compass through the exposure to higher order thinking skills, group discussions, and a lot of fun activities, for sure. I've seen his classroom many times. Physical education is the science of human movement, teaching through the physical, and Brandon produces students that can do and think and value physical movement, as well as positive relationships with one another. Additionally, Brandon has been a giver to his colleagues and future professionals in our field. He is a mainstay of the staff for the Ken Demas Leadership Academy, which draws future professionals in physical education and health from all over New York State every fall for a weekend development program. His presentations at our annual conference are packed with his fans and those who know that they will leave with concepts and ideas that will enrich their own students. And additionally, he's a sought-after presenter for the Open organization, which is the online physical education network, which is not online, really. It is, but they have a lot of in-person workshops, and Brandon presents there when he can. But his strongest trait is his interest in others and his innate ability to compliment others. We often laugh that we have a mutual admiration society Thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. But that's also Brandon, thinking about his students, his colleagues, his friends, his family. And Brandon's wife, Emily, is here tonight, and his mom's here tonight. And my compliments for you to being able to stay up with him. But you guys complement each other very, very well. So Brandon's an amazing example of what a physical educator should be, and this district has one of the premier educators in the United States on their staff. And, you know, you can sit there and say, well, how could she possibly say that? But I do have the credentials to back that up. I've been a physical education teacher, a principal at Bethlehem Middle School. I've been president of this state association, so I've traveled the country a lot and seen the best of the best in educators present at our conferences. And I've been in Brandon's classroom many, many times. So he is incredible. So you really have a gem. So I would, I think I lost where I was, but wherever I am, is I want to thank you for having us here tonight. And I'd like Joanne Sabrin, who's a past president of the zone, and Jen Murphy-Fries, who's on your staff, who is the current president of the zone, to come up and present Brandon with the Teacher 2024 Capital Zone Teacher of the Year Award.
To follow that? You know what, let's cut the
Let's cut to the video.
Okay, so thanks so much, and I don't want to take too much time of the meeting as well, but I am the sum of the lessons I've learned from so many people, and I wanted to show a little gratitude as well. So Sandy is actually the president and founder of a foundation for New York State APERD, and there's these certificates you can give that honor other people as well. So the certificate says New York State Foundation Honor Certificate presented to the person, and then with recognition and sincere appreciation for your inspiration and motivation, you have made a difference in my life. And now I wish I got about 30 more. But I really appreciate everyone being here and supporting. It's so cool, and I've learned so much from everyone in the room. I wanted to give a few because it's kind of interesting. Megan and I teach every day together, and John and Diane have more ideas printed on their printer than most people have in their computer and, you know, backed up in drives. You know, and so many teachers, Majel and Megan and Jamie and Sarah and Anna and Jen, I'm going to say everyone, but I'm just so grateful. So I wanted to give a certificate to Diane and John for having so many great ideas and always bringing the fun and always helping us level up. So a round of applause for Diane and John. And for over a quarter of a century, this teacher has not only supported us with increasing the budget, getting us more equipment, supporting our program, finding different professional developments for us, and just always doing a phenomenal job. I know when we were looking for somebody to come 3 years ago to A.W. Becker, she's like, yeah, I think I might come. And you know, the first day we talked about our strengths, we talked about our weaknesses, and we said, you know what, I really like the lesson plan. She's like, I love to make visuals and engaging tools for the classroom. I go, all right, you do that, I'll do this, you do that. And it's just been fun every day. We have a sign in our office that said, let's make every day a party. And, you know, learning's going to happen when you bring the fun. So this goes to the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Megan McClave. All right, she's not here, but when I started here at A.W. Becker, I had a cooperating teacher named Cheryl Morenz Maybe she was some of your phys ed teachers, yeah? Okay, cool. And Cheryl was super tough, but the kindest person you're ever gonna meet. And she couldn't make it tonight, and I still stay in contact with her, but a lot of the things that we do at A.W. Becker and in our district were started by her. She was an innovator, a person where when Title IX came around, it opened up a lot of opportunities for her, but I mean, she was the person that would wash the uniforms in her own laundry. And anyway, I just can't say enough about Cheryl. She also put up with me as a student teacher, putting a lot of pictures of food, because that was a trend at the time, to take pictures of food on your phone, and then I downloaded them to her computer. But Cheryl's not here, but I wanted to honor Cheryl on the minutes. And then, she's not gonna like this maybe, but this person represents all the mentors in New York State APERT for me. And Sandy really is a wonderful, I know, she's like, why'd you do this? Sandy is a wonderful example of leadership, how to ask great questions and how to listen to the answers. So I wanted to give it to Sandra G. Morley, Sandy Morley as well. So Sandy, round of applause for Sandy Morley. All right, before we show this quick video, I really do appreciate working for RCS, and I appreciate all you do up here to make a difference every day in the lives of our students. And you know, specifically, I love working at A.W. Becker and obviously all the staff. So on behalf of everyone I've worked with or I work with and all the work you do, I would love Deb to come up. And I wrote one out for A.W. Becker and RCS to honor just our district and all the wonderful things we do. So Deb, come on down. All right, I know you already know the great things we do, but just a little highlight reel, little sizzle reel of the great things that are happening at our schools, and thanks so much for the time.
Physical education is all about providing an incredibly fun environment and experience where students can explore, learn, connect, and grow. By getting to know our students and their families, we can meet them where they are to challenge or modify the activities and lessons to help them love movement, fail, learn, try again, and ultimately find success and understanding. We are able to build on the legacy of those who have taught before us and who founded deeply meaningful events and units like the Apple Run, Family PE Week, Wackadoodles Running Club, our holiday obstacle courses, and gymnastics, just to name a few. We are so grateful for those who have laid down strong paths for us and for those who continue to weave in and out of our careers, adding wisdom and generational knowledge, students and staff alike. Personally, I am so grateful for our district's leaders who support our goals, vision, and efforts to provide the best education possible for our students. I am also so very incredibly grateful for the team of teachers I work with who share ideas, their time, energy, and brilliance. We make each other better, and each year contribute our unique skills to enhance the collective level of excellence. New York State APERT continues to help raise me. I am so incredibly grateful for all the mentors who have become part of my personal board of directors. When I have a question, situation, or creative drought, they are always there to help me answer the question, solve the situation, and water and tend to the creative garden of tools and ideas that add life to our day-to-day teaching. In the words of a very dear friend, I know I am making a difference in the lives of my students by teaching in this profession. Thank you all for all you do to make our students' lives more joyful. This award is ours to share.
Congratulations. You've taught all three of my kids. You're outstanding. Thank you for all you do. On behalf of the entire board, congratulations.
If you've ever had the opportunity, you taught my kids too, and they're not there anymore, which is good because I'll tell you, take your parent to Kid Day. He gives you a workout. So thank you very much.
Okay, moving into the rest of the agenda for this evening. Sue, additions, deletions to the agenda There are none, okay. Could I have a motion to accept the minutes of the January 17th Board of Education meeting? Jackie, second. Mike? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, the next presentation we have this evening is a budget presentation, the fiscal profile.
I'm a little offended. Oh, okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. Ooh, it's touchy. We all set? Yeah, sorry. All right, no worries, no. Oh, it's a PDF on Board Docs.
It did look different tonight. Yeah, as far as finding the agenda, yeah.
Okay, we're good.
I noticed
So,
that too.
yeah, so, thanks for everybody who stayed. No, it's gonna be hard to top that. That was amazing. I've heard he is a great teacher, so, this is great. But the first of 4 of our budget presentations for this year, I always like to do a fiscal profile. I think it's important for everybody to know where we are now before we can make decisions on what we're gonna do in the future. So, feel free, I'm gonna go through this relatively quickly. I did meet with the Finance Committee meeting and went into it a little bit more detail. But a lot of these numbers up here are estimates. We're still waiting on some information for tonight. But feel free, if you have additional questions, just shout them out and stop me. So for agenda tonight, we're gonna go over the governor's executive proposal. It's just a few of the key points. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing. The tax cap calculations, reserve updates, and some early budget assumptions that we have some numbers on that I'd like to bring to your attention. So first, the governor's executive proposal came out, I believe it's about 2 weeks now, right around the 16th. Some of the significant things that could affect our district. First, there was 2 significant changes to the foundation aid. One was the end of the hold harmless practice, and that's not going to affect us here at the district, but it is having a significant effect on a lot of other districts. Some districts that people work at and sitting down here right now. And what that is, in the past, with foundation aid, every year they would get additional money. So you would never have less than the foundation aid that you had in the previous year. Now they've waived that. So districts are seeing significant millions of dollars of decrease. Luckily, we are not one of those districts, but you will hear a lot of conversations out there where right now, with this governor's proposal, they are seeing millions of dollars of decrease in funding. The other one that does have an effect on our district is the modified of how the inflation applied to the foundation aid. So if there is no successful school study, which was not performed this year, and I believe that's done, I tried to do a little bit more research on it today, but I believe the federal government does this study. If there's no study done, what's in legislation right now is you have to add an inflation rate to the foundation increase after you do the calculation. What the governor is proposing now is to take a 10-year average of the CPI, which is the inflation rate, and in the past, it's your previous one. So if we were to stay with what we've done in the past, we would see a 4% increase, but because it's a 10-year average, we would only see a 2% on the foundation calculation. So that does have an effect on our aid. Some good news, in the past, I'm sure some of the other predecessors stand up here and they had concerns about the governor going after our expense-driven aids. I can say that has not been mentioned in this proposal, so that's one of the good things coming out of it. Yeah, so there's a certain, and I'll get into a little bit more detail in a couple more slides exactly what expense-driven aid is, but basically what it is, we get aid based on how much money we spend the current year. That's how much we get aid in the next year.
So these expense-driven aids are really a good avenue to kind of estimate exactly what we're going to get year over year. There is some good news in the zero-emission bus mandate. Nothing new on extending the deadline or anything like that, but what the governor is proposing is, right now, with transportation aid, the way it works is if you get grants on that, on what you're buying, so for example, if we were to buy a $400,000 bus, and we would get a $200,000 grant from that bus, and the district would pay the other $200,000, we would only get aid on that $200,000 that the district is paying. What the governor is proposing right now is to include that grant money as well. So we would get aid on the $400,000. And obviously, we wouldn't get any more than 100% of what our aid is. So right now, our transportation aid is 0.7. So we would get 70% back on a purchase like that. Another good news, CPA, which is that where we get free and reduced lunch. It was decreased to 20%, so that gave it for all of our building. That looks like the funding is going to continue for that. So that's also great news. One of the things, kind of small, but it would affect some of the employees that work here. There's no mention of extending the retirement income waiver. So in the past, we've had individuals where you can only make up to $35,000. If you've retired, you're allowed to come back, but you can't make more of that, or it'll affect your pension. The last few years, the governor has waived that, so you're allowed to come back and make as much money as you want. But it looks like that they're going to let that expire at the end of the year. So we do have a few employees that have retired and come back, so that may affect them going forward.
Substitute.
Yeah, absolutely,
That's where
absolutely.
I know
Yep.
it's gonna hit hard.
Yep, we have some part-time individuals too that have come back and helped us. That's definitely going to affect, and that's a district-wide and actually statewide issue. Yeah, absolutely. Any questions on this? Again, these are just proposals. They still have to go and get voted on, but some of these things are pretty scary. But I'm hoping the legislator is going to try to work around this and try to get some more aid for the schools. So this is the state aid estimate from the governor's run. So if you, I think this says it later, maybe not. The 23-24 is what our enacted budget is for this year. And then the estimate is what the governor has given us this year. Again, those are estimated numbers. So if you see the top line, which is foundation aid, is the biggest aid line, we're only getting, right under 1%, so 0.9% increase. Last year we had $1 million. We got $1 million last year. Now we're down to 122. But again, we're not a district that's losing millions. We got high cost aid, private excess costs, building aid and BOCES aid, and transportation aid. Those are all those expense-driven aids that I mentioned before. Those numbers are based on estimates that we did back in August. They have us estimate where we think we're going to do. In a later presentation, I will do an adjustment to those more actual numbers. Some of those numbers are a little bit inflated, so we will be making some adjustments to those. The last one there is instructional material aid. That's based on enrollment, and it's given a number to that. And that includes software, hardware, library aid. I think I'm forgetting one, but there's different components of that. And there is a sheet that's been given out that gives you a little bit more detail on exactly what each line is. So overall, we're looking at a 1.7% increase, big swings in transportation aid and also in building aid. I believe that building aid number is pretty close. We did have a project in the past that has dropped off. So we are going to see probably a decrease in that. I also believe that transportation aid is a little inflated because we did have some contracts that were brought back in-house and we saved a lot of money on those. So we won't be getting as much aid, or we won't be spending as much money either this year. Any questions on these? the whole harmless goes through, correct?
So we are not on the hold harmless because our combined wealth ratio is
Okay.
below the one, which is average throughout the whole district. We are below that. So we are on that foundation calculation.
Okay.
So this would be ours. What I'm hoping to see is that inflation that I talked about before, where she's combining it, I want to see it back at the last year's amount. So we would see an increase there. All right, I know this is kind of small and I apologize, but this is the tax levy limit or the cap. Again, this does not mean this is what we're going to go out for taxes next year. This is just the most we can go out and stay. If we stay within that 4.28%, we can do a vote where it's 50% plus one vote. If we wanted to go above this cap, it would be 60%. So some of the key factors you'll notice in here is if you go down that CPI number, which is 1.02, that's the max that we can get. As most of you know, the inflation is much higher than that. I believe it's at 4 when they pulled this. But the max we can get for this calculation is 2. Some of the big swings that you'll notice on here, I'd like to point out, is our capital levy exclusions year over year has made a swing of about $500,000, and that is because of some of that building aid that dropped off. So what that means is we are able to, because of that aid came off, it's not deducting from our revenue count anymore. So it increases our ability to levy more taxes if we wanted to. Some of the other things I like to point out, 4.2% is right around $1.1 million, which is right around what the foundation increase was last year. I know that's a lot. I understand the 4% it would be a lot on the taxpayers, but it's something that we need to look at, especially with the state aid the way it is right now. One of the key points in this calculation, and if you have any questions about exactly how it's calculated, please let me know. One of the key points is the previous year's tax levy. So if we decide not to go out at the full amount, it's going to limit our ability to tax in the previous years. And I'm sure you guys have heard that. But now it's even more important than it has been in the past when we're seeing lower state aid than we always have. So we have to really consider that as part of the equation when we're doing this, when we're sending it out for the taxpayers. I did a quick analysis. We have left, let's see, $2.3 million over the last 8 years because we didn't go at the cap. So that obviously we didn't need to do it because we were in a good financial situation. But if you think about it, if that was $2 million higher, we'd be sitting a lot nicer right now. Any questions on tax levy cap?
What is the figure in the arrow on the bottom?
That's the increase. That's the amount of money year over year. So that would be the amount of money of that 4.28%. So it's the difference between last year's cap and then this year's, if we were to go out at the full amount.
Okay.
Yeah, because it takes that 28 million and the difference between last year's 27.
So it's that number on the bottom?
Yep.
Minus the
Subtract the
number
top
all the way
one.
on the top?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And again, if anybody wants me to walk you through it, I'm more than happy to do it. And again, there's some terms in your packets as well. So I also think it's important to kind of review real quick where we are in our fund balance. And I know I've stood up here many other nights and discussed fund balance. This is where we're currently at as of December 31st. Couple things to note. This evening, I do have something on the agenda to increase that reserve for tax certiorari account. We did receive something from the Albany Water Board that could charge us, I believe it's over $400,000 with a change in their assessment. So I recommend that we would move some money from the unassigned fund balance, which is at $330 million, into that to protect us. If it didn't go through, we can move it back, but it's a good way to make sure we wouldn't have to budget that in the future. A couple other things to point out, unassigned fund balance is at 6.32%, a little bit over 3.3 million. This year, we did budget, when I say this year, the 23-24 school year, we did budget with a deficit. So what that means is we planned on using some of our fund balance, and this year we're at 2.5. So if we were to do that again, we're almost wiping out completely our unassigned fund balance. So that's, again, something that we need to look at and prepare for in the future. In the future meetings, I will be kind of giving you what those numbers kind of represent, what do those things kind of mean to the whole overall budget. Any questions on the reserves? But again, during hard fiscal times, this is what's going to save us, healthy reserves.
2 capital reserve funds? Or
Yeah, I joined them together.
Okay.
The one has 2.5 million in it, which is the new one we proposed last year, and then the remaining, a little bit over $1 million is the older one.
Okay,
Yep, which is all, you can't add any more to the older one.
right.
So some of the early assumptions, again, very early, but some hard numbers that I can give you guys now. Health benefits are going to go up 9.8%, and that's about $500,000. And prescription is going to go up 10.9%, which is right around $210,000. So you'll get at a little bit over $700,000, and the state aid doesn't even cover that. Some of the good things that we are going to be able to decrease, which are big numbers from the past, is that transfer to food service. And if you guys remember, when our cafeteria department can't function, can't make enough revenue to pay for the expenses, the general fund has to supplant that money into their fund. Going through halfway through the year, we're doing great, and I think we're going to almost be able to balance. The cafeteria might be able to balance their budget, which is great. So that means we'll significantly be able to lower that 115,000. The other thing is mentioned is the contract transportation. Because Craig and his team was able to bring in-house a lot of runs, we're definitely going to be able to decrease that. I'm hoping I need to still have a conversation with the contractors to see if they want to go out to bid or we'll be able to roll it. What do I mean by roll it? You can roll contracts and just add a percentage onto that based on their CPI. But having a good conversation with transportation, those contractors will be able to do that. But I'm hoping we'll be at least a couple $100,000 be able to reduce that. So that should significantly help some of those increased expenses that we're seeing already. Again, these are early assumptions. Those benefit numbers are solid. That's why I wanted to bring them to your attention, and they're big. They're big numbers.
Is 1.1 million.
That was this current year.
Right.
So I think
That's
we're
not the
good.
reduction.
No, well, I wanted to mention it. I don't have any hard numbers to put up there yet for you.
Yeah.
But also the transfer of food service is 115 as well. So if we're able to lower that.
The budget amount is 115. So the decrease won't be 115.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think. I think we'll be pretty close though. I think I'd like to see a little bit, couple more months before we actually put a number there. But I think we can almost drop it at least by 75%.
Okay.
So it's great to see, and it's great to see that CPE is going to continue.
The contract transportation, those are runs busing kids to other districts, correct?
Well, it's instead of our buses doing it, we contract it out for other. Most of them are private schools, and some other ones as well. But again, Craig and his team were able to pull back some of them, so it did help. And hopefully with the new system we're getting in there, we can do better analyzing of runs and be able to pull back more in the future. So that's all I have tonight. Any more questions? Anything you'd like to see in future budget presentations? Yeah, I think it was Pete liked it last year, and I think
Yes.
it's good.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's you don't want to hear me stand up and go through that. I can do this all night. Yeah, so if we can definitely do more of that, so you guys understand exactly what's going on. All right, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, thanks, Jesse. All right, then moving into the next presentation, we've got an overview of closed gap.
Okay. Good evening. We're excited to talk about a powerful social media learning tool for students that we utilize at the elementary level called Closed Gap. So what is Closed Gap? It's a really easy, oh, let me go to the next. There we go. It's really easy for young people to check in with how they're doing and ask for help if they need it. It makes them equally as easy for our amazing staff and faculty members to intervene in real time to help students. It's a moment for students to check in with how they are doing, to label and identify and regulate their emotions and build out and strengthen those emotional literacy skills. Our job is to meet students where they are, regardless of the quality and severity of need. Closed Gap is a safe digital space where young people feel safe sharing with us and then support students depending on the needs. Closed Gap is aligned with New York State social emotional learning standards, as well as aligns with our building goals under social emotional learning and improving our school attendance. So how does Closed Gap work? Here's a graph. I know it's a little bit on the small side, but I can just talk you through it just briefly on how it works on a day-to-day basis. It's a 5-minute check-in for students to complete the Closed Gap screener. The teacher then checks in on the reports that the students put into the tool or the system. And then the teacher can resolve a situation either in class, real time, or if need be, can report for additional interventions for a student. And this gives you basically what it would look like during the course of a day. And here is what the teacher sees on their dashboard. Again, it's a chance to see if the student is asking or requesting for an urgent need. A student could benefit from some support. A student is good to go, or the student didn't check in at all. So it gives the faculty member, the teacher or the faculty member, a chance to actually look real time to see how students are doing on an individual basis. Okay. And now we'll have Ms. DeGoff, our assistant principal, talk a little bit more regarding our Closed Gap program. Thank you.
Use K through 5?
It has the ability to use it K-5. I know in some instances we haven't used it at the younger grades because the way it's set up right now, it's a little difficult on the reading part for our youngest guys.
That was going to
So,
be my next question.
yeah, exactly. So,
Because looking through the next set of slides, that's not something that most kindergarten or first graders would be able to go through independently.
Right.
So,
and we can speak a little more to it as well, too.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I'll just jump in and address it.
Sorry.
So that's okay. So K1, we'll show it in the next set of slides, what we do for most of the students, but for K1, we specifically have some cards. They're actually physical cards,
Okay.
and they can, it's like with Velcro, and they can put their emotion down. So it's a modified system, and then they can transition into the actual digital system.
Okay, Thank
Okay,
you.
you're
I
welcome.
enjoyed looking through the slides, but as I was doing so, I was thinking how it might not be practical for all learners.
Good question.
Okay, so I'm just gonna walk you guys through what the students would see on their end. So the first thing they get to do is choose how they're feeling at the moment. So this is the first slide that they see, they choose their feeling. And then this student in particular decided that they felt kind of meh today, which is kind of fun to say, but, so, sorry, I'm a little punchy tonight, guys, I'm not gonna lie to you. So this student felt very meh, so this is the screen that they would see. And then it would even go a little bit deeper into, are there any other feelings you have behind that that relate to how you're feeling at the moment or what you chose? So they would have a range of all these: uncomfortable, grumpy, guilty, worried, worthless, so on and so forth. Then it would also go into how they feel physically. So they get to choose one that relates to their emotion. In this case, it could be spacey or zoned out, empty, numb, relaxed or at ease, dull or neutral. And then it goes into the next slide, or the next part, I should say, where they would see how they're feeling physically, but also what they chose for emotionally, reminding them that it's okay to feel that way. And then it goes into their energy level. So in this case, it's asking how much fuel you have in your spaceship. So how are you feeling? Are you feeling kind of empty? Are you feeling like you're, ready to go do 20 jumping jacks? So they get to choose where they're feeling at that moment. And then this is where Jenny brought up the great point of there's a series of questions. So at this point, it might be a little difficult for our younger kids to read through them, but they do give them a series of questions to get a better idea of why the student may be feeling that way. So for example, this student is being asked if they're hungry. They get to click yes or no. Another example would be if the student would be asked, is someone at school bothering you? Is your workload at school overwhelming you? Are you feeling tired? All of these questions to really kind of dig into, why are you feeling that way and what can we do to help you? And then they get to this slide, as a reminder that they can ask for help. It's okay to say, I would really like to talk to someone. No one feels great all the time, and that's all right. And then that leads to the next part that my other fearless leader behind me, Deb Newbart, is going to take over.
Good evening again. So whether or not our students would like help, the system has a lot of built-in interventions to help students. And they show 6 out of 7 each time, depending on what they choose through the program. What's great about this is our student support staff go into the classrooms through our second step, so it's kind of linked together. And they show what these are. So at the beginning of the year, how do I click on the slide? The actual. Okay, thank you. Oh, no, I mean, it's linked. It's linked to,
A video?
yeah, what's linked to?
You want me to play a video?
No, this slide is linked. Is there a way to click on the actual slide?
What would you like me to do? They practice this.
It worked much smoother. Okay, so this is going to actually go to the Closed Gap site. Mr. Goff, if you can go down a little bit. So these are the interventions, and if you can just click on the first one, box breathing. So each one of those, and then if you go to the bottom to the shake it out there. And as we click through, you can see each one in here, it gives a description. These interventions are research-based, as this whole Closed Gap program is. There's a lot of research that's put into this. So these are great for parents to look at, to use at home. Our students are taught how to use each of these: the gratitude list, the journaling, the box breathing, power pose, let it go. So the kids will go through all these questions, and then whether or not they have an adult they would like to talk to or not, they can choose one of these interventions which will assist them in the moment. All right, so how do I get back now? Just right on the slide. Okay. All right, thank you. So this student would have chosen the breathing, and then it guides them through that. So this might help. Let's take 5 deep breaths. And then it asks them, it's a check-in again for them. How are you feeling now? Did that help? About the same or worse? That's the end of what it looks like for the student. And then that's where it goes to the adult dashboard that Mr. Jones talked about at the beginning. So we wanted to show you some student examples. And again, this is small for you to see, but I believe that you have it at your seat. This is an actual student example that was back in January. And it takes all the data in the system and it prints it out right for the teacher to see. So it shows immediately the student wants to talk. So that's where it flags in red. It would come right out on the teacher's dashboard that this student wants to talk. Otherwise, it wouldn't come up in the red zone. And it shows what flagged. The student is hungry, tired, lonely, and they're overwhelmed by the workload. And then it gives the other responses. And then there's also a field where the student can type something in if they choose to. So this student just said, I'm really tired and the homework is really hard. And typically something to this level, a teacher might be able to go over and talk to the student about that, about the homework, how can I help? If not, it can then be turned over to one of the counselors and then they can talk to that student about it if need be. So as with academics, we collect a lot of data and social emotional in a lot of different ways. So we do that in a few ways with Closed Gap. This is one piece of data. This is an individual piece, individual student data. So this is one student's, the data points basically, starting, I can't see it from here, but basically back in October, I think it was, up to the present. And there are people in the building that have access to that, including the classroom teacher, of course. And if I were to be able to hover over each of those little dots, the data points, I could click on it and then get the report for that day, how that student was feeling. In addition to individual data, our teachers do a great job at collecting their own classroom data. So this is a look, taking out student names. You could imagine what if a student's name were in that first row looking across, you could see a glimpse at a child's month. You know, whether they're happy, mad, excited, tired, upset. So they collect their own data, and then we also have a master sheet of everyone in the entire building, how they are doing with their social emotional check-ins. So we can look for any consistent patterns, anyone who's consistently flagging, and then be able to provide them with additional interventions as needed. So, success stories. We have been using this for 4 school years now, and we have definitely seen success with this program. I'm going to skip to the last bullet first. One of the best ways we know that is because there are students who we would have never known anything is happening with them. And it could just be that they're overwhelmed. They're hungry. They are sad about something. I saw a comment in December, it made me giggle, but it was so true, that the student found out that her, I don't know if I should say this in public session, that something related to Christmas that sits on the shelf wasn't necessarily real, and it was a huge concern, and she didn't know how to contain that secret. So it was a big deal, and she didn't know how to go on. So there's things that sometimes kids come to school with, and they don't know how to process, and if we don't know and we can't help them get over that hump, they are not, learning is not accessible for them. So we have seen time and again where students that we never would have known, because they don't have outward behavior where they're acting out, but we have set up additional interventions for them, and they're now doing great because of it. We do have families that are asking how they can use it at home because the kids are asking. And students who want to check in more than once a day because they really like the tool. And we also added on the bottom there, it is research-based, so we just put up some of the sources of research because it is a highly recommended tool. And it's also free. Any questions for us?
Over to bullet 3, how families can, if families can use it at home, you know, I mean, if families have reached out, is there a way for families to utilize this resource at home as well?
So students have accounts and they can sign, I believe they are signing on at home if they have the account access at school. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to sign on. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. No, good question. So there is an opt-out, like we sent home the information at the beginning of the year, and families can opt out. I know at Becker, our participation rate is very high. We're definitely in the 90s. Most of our students are doing it, 90%.
So if the parents have not opted out, then is it required that each day the student complete this?
It's not required. If you saw way back in one of the fields, some students just didn't check in. Occasionally, we'll have a whole class that just, something happens and the whole class won't check in.
Okay. So is this tool specifically designed for K through 5? Or does it have applicability beyond those
It is
grades?
beyond, it is beyond.
Okay.
I
So
think
this-
it might go all the way
this-
up to 12, definitely through 8.
Okay. This probably is not a question for you, but I'll ask it while everybody's there. Middle and high school, what happens? So, you know, we go through Becker and Peter B, and students are used to using a tool like this. What happens when they reach middle school and beyond? And I don't need an answer right now, but I'd like to know if anybody has that information. Does anybody have that answer now? Okay, maybe in a future. Right, maybe in a future meeting then, we can talk about middle school and high school and what we're doing there. Because this is one tool, right? For the broader, you know, concept of social emotional needs. I imagine there's other tools that are also used. This is a good one, it looks like, but I think we'd like to know what's being done in the other buildings as well. But thank you for the elementary overview, we really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. I know there's been a lot of questions, so we're happy to explain it a little bit more in depth for you.
Sorry, I just have one more question. I apologize. But on slide 7, that's a lot of words for the kids. Are they given some assistance with understanding what these words mean? Because I read them as an adult and I understand what they mean, but I don't necessarily know that second graders would understand that inherently.
So,
Sorry.
that's
It's
okay.
A lot of words.
They do, this is adapted to the grade level,
Okay.
and I believe, I was the one that was screenshotting these, so I believe I signed on as a 5th grader
Yeah,
with
later
this
on in
one,
this
so.
slide, it says something about 5th grade. Okay, I accept those words for 5th grade without as much
Yeah.
concern, mostly. But second grade, I would be a little uncomfortable with them understanding the depth of some of those and selecting the wrong one because they don't understand.
Right.
Which I imagine the teacher would be able to figure out with a quick check-in, like, oh, you didn't really mean that you feel enraged, you know, like, that's a pretty significant emotion.
Sure.
And you're not really displaying enraged. All right, it was up there, I thought so. Okay.
Just one other question that came to mind. If a family does opt out, how is that tracked and implemented in the schools? Is the account somehow flagged as an opt-out account, or is the teacher informed?
So the teacher is informed, the teacher would know, so the teacher doesn't go on it. We basically just don't make an account for the student for the school year, so we do it every single school year. We update the accounts. So
Okay.
that student just wouldn't have a closed gap account for that year, so they wouldn't get on.
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, that takes care of our presentations for tonight, so we'll move into business considerations. We have 6.1 through 6.11. Is there a motion to approve one or more? All right, Jenny, thank you. Second? Pete, thanks. Any discussion on the business considerations?
So I think you might have to pull out 6.9, but it also kind of brings up a question that I have anyways. So 6.9 is a donation sheet from me, which is why I say I don't think that I should be voting on that one. I think I should recuse myself. But honestly, it feels like a very silly thing to have needed to do, so I kind of wanted to discuss this. So I have donated things to like the kids' classrooms and whatnot in the past, and I was unaware of this process. But I understand because a teacher had brought to my attention that, you know, donations always need to be approved by the board. And honestly, it never even crossed my mind for something as small as this. Do we really need to have a donation sheet completed for every time a very minor donation is made? In this case, I mean, I can tell you, these are instruments my kids didn't use anymore. I reached out to a teacher just to say, hey, could you use these rather than me throwing them out or throwing them in a donation bucket? So it feels silly to need to approve these on the board level. And I was just wondering, I mean, is there a threshold for this? And also, I mean, I guess, if this is something that we really need to be doing for even the smallest amount of donations, then I think it needs to be better communicated because, I mean, my oldest kid is in 6th grade, and this is the first time that I have ever heard of this, and certainly not the first time that I've asked a teacher if they could use something that I no longer need. I understand, you know, it was discussed with our attorney, and the recommendation is that a donation form is completed every time. This just seems very silly.
Jackie, was there a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, do we really need to have a donation completed for every single, even minor donation, or could we, I mean, perhaps have a threshold for when this is? And I mean, in the alternative, if truly a form like this is needed every time that even a small donation is made to the district, then I think that it needs to be made much more publicly aware because, like I said, you know, my kids have been in the district for many years now, you know, starting from pre-K. My oldest is now in 6th, and this is the first time that I was really even aware that I should be doing this.
Ordinarily, what happens is the person speaks to a teacher or a principal and says, I'd like to donate something, and then they would direct that person to the form. And it's a good question as to whether there's a threshold. Anything that is in the district is the property of the district, and hypothetically inventory by the district, the tables, the microphones, the signs, and all that. So there's an acquisition, there's an inventory, and there's a disposition of it. We can ask if there could be a threshold that may be something in board policy that we adjust, that smaller items could be donated. We can check.
Yeah, I just, you know, I mean, certainly if this is the process, this is the process, and like I'll complete the form whenever I donate something at this point, understanding that. But I do also think that, you know, I mean, situations like this particular one probably happen a whole lot. And if we were to actually be approving every single donation of these small amounts, we are going to be bombarded with the amount of paperwork.
Yeah, the other reason for the form is sometimes people are trying to give us things that we don't want. They pull up with their truck or their car and they start unloading stuff.
I certainly don't want that
What it
happening.
does is it becomes a process that's carefully considered. So you see all the signatures on there. So that isn't just a teacher accepting an old sofa and putting it in their classroom. That is not okay. Or something that has chemicals or is dangerous or is not fireproof. And so that's why there's the process. But we can check on that. Even if it's, you know, I think if there were a threshold, it would be a threshold for whether it comes with a board or not. We would still do all the rest of the process.
Okay.
We'll check.
Yeah, and I think that maybe it should be better communicated, you know, and I'm not trying to put this on anyone else, but like I said, like I do this kind of stuff routinely, just, you know, like I don't want to throw something out, it's still perfectly good, you know, and reaching out to a teacher who I think might be able to use it. And this was just the first time that a teacher came back and you know, mentioned to me that it's supposed to be approved by the board, and I was completely unaware, so I'm not sure that the understanding that this is supposed to be completed every time that something is donated to a classroom, I don't think that's being communicated. In fact, I can confirm, over the past, 10 years, it's definitely not being
I
communicated.
think it truly only matters that the teacher and the principal know that it's required. I don't think it's as important as the parents know, because if they want to
Right.
give us something, they would just, give it to us, right?
Right, but to that point, I don't know if teachers are not fully aware that they really need to be doing that anytime that a parent reaches out. But also, to this end, I personally donated things to all 4 schools last school year, and I mentioned it at a board meeting. Nobody said anything. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but I told all the principals that I was going to the school and I dropped those things off. And at no point during that did anyone mention to me that I should be completing any form. And that was significantly more than this handful of old maracas that were sitting in a bin in my house. So I don't think it's being communicated. It certainly was not communicated to me when I was in front of the board and I said that I would be donating items, that I would be dropping them off at the schools. No one even at that board meeting said anything to me, yourself included. So I don't think it is being communicated to people that they are supposed to be completing any sort of paperwork to donate something to the school.
Well, I
So
definitely.
if it is something that we need, I just think that it needs to be actually communicated to people when they reach out to donate
I
something.
think we should look at it and see what, I was surprised that this formal process was required, but it made sense for the reasons that were described. But I think we should be careful not to write a rule that is so all-encompassing that it impacts things that are done every day, like, sending snacks into a classroom,
Right,
That was the example I was.
classroom supplies, tissues,
Right.
things like that. What's that, Jesse?
If there's a certain amount, it's worth a certain amount of money, we have to put it
right.
on our
Correct.
That's why I'm
financials.
thinking,
Yeah.
perhaps a threshold or something, and certainly that the school could still decline things if someone were to donate something that is not appropriate to the school. But, perhaps a threshold.
Yeah, I think
would be
that's something we can take to the
helpful.
policy committee. We
Yeah.
can talk with Ryan, our attorney, again. To be honest with you, I didn't appreciate at the time, I heard instruments, and I think I made certain assumptions that instruments were more valuable.
Not these ones, many are, yes, many are, sorry.
And
Let
something
me
that
be
we-
clear.
right.
The musical instruments I'm talking about are like little egg maracas and tambourines that my kids had when they were like toddlers, and we just don't use them
I
anymore.
saw the photo later on and felt kind of silly. But to me, instruments certainly would be something that we want to inventory as a district.
That is why the whole process started,
Right,
because the
exactly.
discussion was about
Yeah,
instruments, right?
so it's a good question. I think it is something we look at because as we know, every day, there's things that are being brought into the school for common use, and we don't want to write a rule that is just impossible for
Yeah.
everybody to follow.
Like,
And
no
we have-
offense, but I bought tape for Evan's steam station at school, and it was $10 worth of tape that I sent into school that I don't
Right.
need any acknowledgement approval for. Happy to send in tape for STEAM projects, like.
Right,
And we
It's a very
don't want
routine
to
request.
discourage that,
right,
right?
yeah,
We
no,
want to
absolutely.
keep that
Yeah.
flowing unobstructed.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I just also don't want us to be getting a form every time that someone sends in tape. Because I feel like that, it will be an incredible amount of paperwork if we started getting that, not to mention the number of things that we have to approve on
Again,
this.
Mike was right, it was precipitated because of what, the name of what was being donated. The belief was that it was going to be of higher value, that's the only reason that precipitated. When you say a musical instrument, a saxophone, a tuba, a trombone, a trumpet, there's hundreds.
Well, that's why I had sent the photo with it to the teacher, and then when I forwarded it to you, I also sent the photo, which is just a pile on my floor, honestly. But, like I said, I think that we either maybe should look at like what the threshold for this is, or if perhaps we need to be communicating this better to make sure that we, if this is something that we need to approve every time, then people need to be aware when they're dropping something off that they need to be doing that. That being said, I think that one needs to be pulled out of the approval because I would recuse myself from it.
Yep.
I have a couple of questions too. My question is on 6.6. I think this is what you referred to in the presentation about the Albany Water Works. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep, that
Then
is
that
correct.
eliminates that question. You just answered it. So 6.7, can this be explained further? What is the non-resident tuition rate in reference to? Who's charged this? What do we do with it? I'm unaware. I've never seen this
Yeah,
before to
so
my knowledge.
this is for foster students. And
For its
the-
what?
The foster students, we have foster students that
Okay.
say they're put in foster care and we'll just say Albany. And then they
Okay.
come to our district. We charge the original district a certain amount. And this is those amounts.
Okay. Is that how it's done? Like in general? Oh,
Yeah.
all right. So
Goes back to 6.4 and 6.5. I'm assuming that would be the reciprocal.
So no, those are completely different. Those are 6.4 and 6.5. Those are when you have our students going to private schools.
Those are private, okay.
Yeah, and those private schools are within those districts. Those districts provide services for those kids.
Right.
They're technically our kids.
Right.
Even though they don't go here, they're our responsibility. So we have to pay for those services that those other schools, and we do the same. If we had a private school within our borders, we would do the same thing, but we don't.
Thank you.
and last one, sorry. You can go.
It's okay, it's on the same
Sure.
one that you were asking about. I'm sorry, I think that was 6.7, the non-resident tuition rates. Is there a reason that the numbers are going down? I feel like it's just
No, it's-
not usual
It's a
to
great
see
question.
numbers
It's a
going
great
down from
question.
one year to
So
the next.
I think it kind of explains it on top, but let me give a little background exactly how this is calculated. So the way this is calculated is they back out, they take the numbers, first off, the 23, 24 are estimated numbers. They take estimated numbers for what we put in previously back in August for what we're going to see for the 23, 24. They back out things that are not like local costs. So for example, transporting private school kids to their school. But they take out stuff like that. They take out stuff that doesn't actually pertain to kids attending this school. So they back that out. They also back out state aid. So it's really a local cost or what the taxpayers locally are for these students. So the actual rates are actual numbers from last year, and 23, 24 are estimated numbers. So they swing a little bit here and there. Again, these numbers here are decreased because we estimated back in August, and they'll make an adjustment. That's why you see both of them on here. So if we were to bill, again, I'll just use Albany, and say, hey, we billed you this amount, and then we'll do an adjustment once we get the actual numbers.
Okay.
Is that, hopefully I answered your question.
Reasonably. It's usually surprising, like to see the number go down as opposed to
It
up
also has
from
an
year to
enrollment
next.
number in there as well.
Okay.
Special ed students have an effect on that. They have a higher weighting ratio to it. So I haven't looked exactly if that has a huge effect on it, but generally it's because of the estimated numbers.
Okay, thank you.
My last question is on 6.10, the abolishing a position. Maybe we've spoke about this before, I'm sorry, so. if
Yeah,
you
so
wanna remind
we
me.
had, as you guys know, we had a few members of our business office leave almost a year ago now.
Okay.
We did fill one of those positions with a new position, inventory technician.
Okay,
We still have one left over, but we don't feel at this point that we need this position anymore. I took on a lot of responsibilities, and then also a lot of the other individuals in the district office has taken on more of the responsibilities of what this individual did in the past. So at this point, we don't believe like we need this position anymore.
so it didn't change, like,
Nope. It's just that individual left and we haven't filled it.
right, but like that name is still a name, what, the CSE list, or like what is? Okay, so
Oh,
this is
civil
the civil
service,
service
yes.
name, so like if, for example, you decide the end of next year, like, wow, we're really hurting and we think we really need this individual back, this title still exists.
Yeah, we could
On
go
the
back
civil
out, but we,
services.
at this
Okay.
point, would have to come and ask you guys
Correct.
to add it back. We'd have to ask you
Okay.
guys for the
But
position.
that is also something you can do.
Yes,
correct,
absolutely,
okay.
yep.
I just want to make sure if we're getting rid of it and we feel it needs to come back, that's.
Yeah, no, we can come and ask you, hey, can we please add this back? Yep.
Okay.
We created that inventory clerk position before hiring Joe
Okay.
into that job. And we could or should have eliminated this one at the same time.
Okay.
Just basically exchanging the two.
Okay. I had a few things that I thought it could potentially be, and I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly.
Good question.
Back to that sub rate. I wanted to bring up the fact that there are TAs who are great quality TAs who won't sub for teacher positions because they would be making less in a day than if they subbed for TA positions. And I think that requires some discussion, if not at this point, then when we create our own pricing list that we had talked about after BOCES. Because a retired TA subbing for another TA makes $28 an hour approximately if they'd been here quite a while. If they were to sub for a teacher, they would be making $110 a day. If you do the math, they're not going to ever sub as a teacher when they could be some of our best subs. And especially when we're short on subs, that's a problem. So I just wanted to call that out.
That rate you're discussing is only for people that we've appointed at the board level and they're here for a window of time. We let them work at their outgoing rate. It's not a person who's just subbing, just coming in and subbing. They would be paid the sub rate for TAs. So it's a unique rate. That $28 is not something we would pay someone who is just, coming in on a Monday and a Friday and subbing.
Okay.
So that would help. If they could sub for a teacher and make more money if they did that.
But you're saying they don't make more money than the teacher, right? Is that what you're saying, Mel?
That's the understanding that can you explain that again? I don't think
Sure. A teacher or anybody who comes in and subs for a TA is paid the sub-TA rate, which is $15 or $16 an hour, which is less than $110 a day. We occasionally might hire someone to do a long or short-term subbing position as a teaching assistant, and we pay them out of courtesy, their retired TA, we pay them their outgoing TA rate.
Okay.
What is
That
their
didn't
outgoing, what does that mean? the
Whatever,
outgoing?
if Jean might make $28 when she retired, I might make $29. So if we hire them, board appointed, we hire them at their outgoing TA rate. So Jean would get 28 and I would get 29.
Okay, that's not what it looks like on here. On here, it looks like the sub rate for a retired teaching assistant is their outgoing hourly rate.
That's what it says.
That's what it says.
Right.
And it's a difference of $14 if it's an 8-hour day. So if you're saying that their outgoing hourly rate was $28 and they're paid for 8 hours, it's $224. And that's a difference of $14 for a retired teacher for a day.
Are you looking at 7.2? I'm not sure what you're looking at, I apologize.
Is it
6.8.
Okay, gotcha.
Go back and look.
Is it an 8-hour day?
Oh, I understand what you're saying now, yeah.
No? Okay.
Am I crazy?
So I
Is
guess,
that-
more of the question would be perhaps if those TAs,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
those
See what I'm saying?
retired,
I
if
feel
those
crazy.
retired TAs were to substitute for a teacher,
Correct.
then I guess maybe the question is, could they also be paid at their outgoing rate for that, even though they were previously a TA as opposed to a teacher?
Correct. That's what,
They would have to go through the BOCES sub-service in order to teach for a teacher through here. Then they would make that 1, 10, 20s, whatever, 30, depending on their certification.
okay,
But if
but
they're-
I'm saying they wouldn't do that because they would only want to sub for TA
Right, I see what you're
positions
saying.
because, so we're losing, and that might be something that we can't deal with now while we're dealing with BOCES. But as we start to look at that new sub pay rate, if we're taking it on ourselves, that's something that I would really like us to look at because some of these TAs are way more qualified and experienced and could be great substitute teachers for us, but they won't sub if they're gonna be making that much less than they would if they were subbing for a TA. So I hope that makes sense to you.
I do want to add, though, we have a sub shortage for TAs as well. So
Okay.
having high-quality TAs that we can call on is really important.
Okay.
So we have a separate line in here for certified retired RCS teachers, which is the 210 per day.
Right. And for the certified retired TAs, or retired TAs, that's what,
Should there be a designation for retired RCS TAs filling a teaching spot, right? So a separate pay rate that isn't necessarily the $210 a day, but is somewhere appropriate, right? So that's a category in and of itself, it seems like. A TA who retired from the district who is now teaching, filling a teacher absence, as opposed to filling a TA absence.
A separate whole line item, right?
Right.
I think it's a unique situation.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
I
but
think
it
this-
did just happen, so
Right.
I
I
was
think-
just having this conversation.
No, I agree with you.
so-
I think that we need to look at these situations when we get away from BOCES.
Yes.
I think, I probably shouldn't say that now, but
Yeah.
when we decide to go a different route, I think these are one of the issues that we should look at.
And I also
Absolutely.
think that we should go back to the retired teachers from other districts as well. That should also be another
We're gonna do that.
classification. Yeah. I know we talked about it last time, but I really want to.
Yeah.
And then, did anybody else have 6.8?
Can I just ask how many hours a day the TAs are being paid for? Like, how long is a school day, or does it depend on where they sub? Like, if they sub for a full day, how many hours are they here?
An elementary day, 7 hours, 55 minutes, high school, 7 hour, 10 minutes,
Okay, so 7.5 to,
minus lunch.
they don't get paid lunch for that? Okay, so it's like 7
Straight hour,
hours?
yeah.
Okay.
We wanted to put this all in one nicely wrapped package when we're going to an alternative sub-plan. And we're trying to accelerate that. We're definitely going to be done by the fall and ready for the fall. We're trying to accelerate it to try and lessen, fall implementation fatigue. When we come back, we're all busy trying to get ready just to do our work. And it would be helpful if staff could be onboarded before we come to September. But our idea was to try and wrap this all up together. The staggered pay rates that we talked about last time for retired RCS teachers, retired any teachers, and the TA rates that you're talking about. And quite frankly, it's good you pointed it out, Mel, and I don't remember when we did it. We added this retired RCS teaching assistant line not that long ago, and primarily because we never, not once, had a TA come out of retirement and work for us. And this person might be the second or third ever, so it isn't.
But I think as
that prevalent.
financial times are getting harder and harder, that you might see it more.
So do these,
Often,
if
so-
there is this TA who's retired from the district and is filling in for a teacher spot, does that come through BOCES?
No,
No, she's doing a TA spot.
it was a theoretical. She
Oh, this is
ended up
theoretical?
filling a TA spot because of this issue.
If she was to
So-
fill a teacher spot, though, would that be placed through BOCES? Okay, so we need to get away from BOCES in order to address this.
And we'll stop saying that right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, that's my fault.
Listen, the BOCES subservice is one of the least expensive services that we have, but as we said, we're not, it's less than $10,000. I think it's $8,000, but we're not yielding the benefit from it. And it's not their fault. I mean, we are just in a place and a time where there isn't a bench of people waiting to do this work, which is why we said, going back to the old school, which is we own the people, we know who they are, we're making the calls, and a person knows a person and they help us get the person in. It is just more local control, and we think that at this juncture, it has to be better than what we have in place. So we have a little bit of time, but we'll do some work on this schedule, and we'll see what we can do with it in order to meet all the things that we've been talking about. And we really did. We went to the outgoing rate to try and get any of them to come back. Because they wouldn't do either job. They weren't subbing for teachers either.
Yeah.
But it was intended to bring some people back, and at least we got the 2 or 3 in the last 5 years, which is
We
a win.
have some stars who are retired teachers also, which was really nice to see this morning.
I would also encourage this individual to reach out to Seth and his department to make him aware of these kind of
Okay.
situations, so we can definitely.
Currently, I'm very happy where this person landed, so
Okay.
we're not
I'm
gonna
just saying,
tell her that there's any.
In the future,
Yes.
if there's
Okay.
subbing issues, please bring it to Seth in the HR department. So we can we're trying to get as many.
Like I
as we
said,
can.
I
So-
happen to be aware of this particular situation because of the situation it was.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring it just to say, hey, you know,
Gotcha.
there's these quality people out there who we might be able to pull in with a rope to sub for us if we can make it lucrative for them. Also, on 611, I just had a question, why a consultant agreement instead of a sub-admin? What's the difference there? Since we were looking at 6.8 and then that came up, I just wondered what the difference was.
Sure. Which one is number 611, right?
Yes.
It's a good question. It really does depend on the person that we're having come in. The other rate that we have on the list is really referencing BOCES. We tell BOCES, this is what we're willing to pay for people that they have that are willing to come. We purposely sought out this person.
Okay, I kind of thought maybe that's what it was. Okay, thank you.
Anything further on business considerations? Okay, we'll need to revise the motion then to exclude 6.9. So the initial vote then would be for 6.1 through 6.11, excluding 6.9. Yes. Jenny, move, second?
Second.
Mike, okay.
Thank God.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Approving 6.1 through 6.11, excluding 6.9?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We then need a motion for 6.9. Mike, second? Pete? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. Okay. All right. Jackie, thank you for your donation.
You're very welcome. Thank you for getting them out of my house. I really appreciate it. Every little bit helps.
All right, personnel considerations, 7.1 through 7.15. Is there a motion for one or more?
Oh,
Jenny, motion for all. Ed, second. Any discussion on personnel considerations?
I'm very sad that Craig will be leaving us. That'll be a big loss for our district.
Can we deny that resignation? Are we allowed to do?
Yeah, we're sorry for all the resignations, obviously, but Craig is one in particular that, you know, we'll need a strong person to come in to fill his shoes. I'm sure that we'll find that person, but that is a loss for RCS. We're sorry to see him go. Any further discussion?
So it's not specifically related to any of the appointments on here, but I was just wondering, specific to resignations in general, do we have any process for like an exit survey or an exit interview or something, just to get feedback from folks who are leaving, you know, especially related to like why they may be leaving the district, so that we can make improvement in the future?
Seth does exit interviews with most people. Our HR director does exit interviews with most people now, in person or over the phone,
Okay.
where they go.
If there's information of relevance, you know, recommendations for ways that we can improve, is that information that can be shared with the board, even in a general sense, not necessarily specific to the individual, but in an anonymous sort of sense would be fine with me, but just that we're, you know, hearing some of that feedback so that we can make sure that where there's room for improvement, that we're taking that into consideration.
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Okay, moving into special reports. For myself, the only thing I note is that earlier today, some of us went to each of the buildings in the district to present our proposed vision, mission, and goal statements to all of the teachers during their professional development time. We gave a quick overview. I think it was well received. We emphasized that the reason we were there is because we wanted to present this directly to the teachers before we did anything formally as a board, because they are the ones who are so crucial in making this work. It's great to have that milestone met, to have that communication, and I think now we're poised, probably at the next board meeting, to adopt our vision, mission, goal statements. So look forward to that in the agenda.
What happens if the teachers come back and say, hey, look, this is what I think about this, or this is, I mean, how many teachers do we have?
230 or so?
230 or something? I mean, what happens if they come back and say they want to give some input?
Well, certainly, we encourage that. We'll certainly look at it. We'll consider it. You know, I don't know that we're at a stage now where we can make, you know, large changes to
Right.
what we've come up with as a board after our 8 hours of facilitated sessions.
Yeah.
But I think more of those comments will probably play into how we implement the vision, mission, and goals. So certainly, you know, if any teachers have reactions, and I've already received some of those, they've all been positive so far, which is
Right.
great.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yes.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, but whatever reactions there might be, absolutely, right? We want to work collaboratively with everybody in the district.
Is there communication that can go out to the staff that says if you have a comment or
I guess how would we, the only
How would we do
question on
that?
that would be how we funnel that.
right?
Is, like, you said earlier too, how would we, if we do that, how would we funnel that? That way there's not, I don't know how many people would want to comment, but one school did, and so you don't want 57, 60 emails. Is there a way to, we'd have to figure out a way to condense it?
We would, and again, you know, I think the focus, I think if we're soliciting feedback, I think the focus would be less on how could we write a goal statement better, what words might we use instead, but instead the feedback is how could we best implement these goals,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And that's what we would
The
welcome.
objectives are still
Correct,
going to be defined. So
Correct.
those are the
Right.
things that they could still play into.
correct, yes.
And I have a feeling that's probably where they're looking to give feedback.
We would just have to figure that
I
out.
think we should, yeah, I mean, I think we need to, right, so this is step one, coming up with these statements. And then future steps are the objectives, the implementation. And maybe as part of that process, we think about who we're going to solicit feedback from and how we're going to do that. If we're going to do another round of surveys, would be one way to collect data from staff on this. That would funnel everything to a survey point, or if there's some other mechanism to collaborate there.
Also, can we send your presentation to the staff so that they have it in front of them?
I was going to talk about a communications plan.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And maybe there's a way at the building level, right? Because we talked about, when you talked about today, now the next step will be for the leaders to put a plan together on implementing it and the processes and all that. Maybe at that point, at each building, when they do that, maybe they can seek input from the teachers at that point on how to implement those objectives. And then maybe then it comes to one focal point to the principal, and then they can relay that back to us, or something like that.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind, of course, too, is today's presentations were to the teaching staff.
Correct.
There are many other district employees. Everybody plays, the statements are so broad. Every employee in this district plays a key role in implementing them. So part of the communication plan will be everybody who didn't have the information today, some mechanism to make sure that all of our employees are made aware and explained to them. We can transition right into
So
your report stuff.
first I
really.
was going to say, all the folks who present tonight, Debbie, Tori, Hakeem, Jesse, were excellent and poised. And when Jenny and Mike and Ed presented to the staff today, they were excellent and poised. The message was clear. It looked like they had rehearsed it. We walked on the first one at 8 o'clock, and it was seamless. They each took a portion of the presentation, and it was well-received. You could see people, first, they were excited to see board members, right? In their space is one thing, but also talking about the care, the language is very encouraging. And Mel and Mike were able to join us later on for some of the sessions, for some of the two of the sessions. And everybody got to say a little bit to the staff, the teaching staff. And the words that, Mike and everyone echoed were, "We can't do this without you. We're speaking to you because you're the key ingredient to this." That's the right message. So from there, I'm going to share what we did today, what you did today, with the rest of the staff. The teachers represent about half of our staff. I'll share with the rest of the staff and say that board members did a tour of the district today, and this is what they shared, and the process that they followed. And beyond that, I think it's sensible, we will, Michelle, who's here taking pictures tonight, our communications person, we will, after they're adopted by the board, do the full public one. So we'll have it on our website, we'll do a news story, we'll do our social media around that. The hard part, as you talked about, Mike said a few times today, the leaders will talk about objectives, implementation, and measurements. And what we'll do is we'll do what we do when we're confronting any large-scale thing. We will have that discussion, but we'll involve the district leadership team, which is the union representatives, district leadership, and some staff, and some parents. We'll involve the C&I committee because there's an academic portion of that. And we're establishing targets and action plans. They should be relevant to what the board target around academics is. And we'll involve the building leadership teams, the BLTs. That's where the staff will have voice in the development of these things, because you're right, there was a 30,000-foot view with a clear expectation that if we were to ask any child, is this the service you're getting? They'll say, yes, it is. It might be at second grade, it might be at the 7th grade. But with those 4 groups, the leaders, the DLT, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, and the building leadership teams, that will give people a lot of voice in developing how we're going to come up with our objectives, implementation, and the measurements around that. So it'll take a little bit of time, but just like with our building level targets and action plans, very few of them are, we're going to do this for 10 months and we're going to be done. They're usually, we're going to do this until we're good at it, and we're going to follow along and make sure that our implementation is creating a difference until we're good. So some of them are 2 and 3 years. I think that some of the things you set forth will be 2 and 3 and 4 years. And these committees will work to develop those things that, with reasonable timelines, show us that we are accomplishing what you've set forth. Any questions about that? All right, the rebranding committee met yesterday, and we talked about 4 things. We looked at some renderings that the commercial artists at BOCES helped us do based on our winning students' art. And we narrowed it down to 2 possible images. And it really came down to the beak, to be frank. It came down to the beak. Preserving everything else that Madeline created. The one debate that we had is anatomically correct beak or the beak that was in her drawing. So we selected 2 vectors of that, and a vector is like it's a 4-color version of what the artist created so that it can be made into patches or iron-ons or something on the floor, in the gym. So it brings it down to really just 4 colors instead of shading and grade. we talked as a committee of who was best prepared to make the decision, because we didn't go back out to the community and have them vote all over again. So we decided that we're going to have the junior class make the selection. First, it's important to note, Michelle and I debriefed afterward, we think the artist is okay with either one, because they preserve elements of her artwork. That's important. She was on the call with us yesterday. Madeline was on the call with us yesterday. The junior class, because they're the first students in our midst that are going to graduate as the Ravens.
I love it. I love that idea.
So next week, during their social studies classes, we're going to have all the juniors vote between the two logos, and we'll have our winner. And then we'll share with that images with everybody. But they're both very good, and I'm very proud of the work that she did and the work the committee's done. We've been working on this for over a year, and it seems like forever, but we are far ahead from some of our peers in the area that haven't even said a word about what they are going to be when the page turns going into next year. So good for us. We did a lot of really heavy lifting, and I'm very proud of that. The other things we talked about is how and what will be transformed when. We talked about some timelines around that. In other words, the center of the court in the main gym, when is that going to be changed? So there was a hard list of those things that we think it was all-encompassing. We're going to create approximately when that'll happen, and we'll make that available to everybody so everyone knows. It's not going to be a secret. Some of it will be, during the summertime when we know it won't be in use. Some of it might be done during a construction project. Some of it might be done this year during a break. Hard to say. I don't think that's our plan at all, but if people can see the timelines, then they'll know and what to expect. The other thing we talked about in that was how are we going to promote to our community to get them excited and enthusiastic? So what might we value add? What are we going to add to this? So what more things might we see? Like we talked about, maybe someone might help sponsor a billboard in the community, like the 2 billboards that are north and south on 9W. Someone might sponsor it, or maybe Lamarck, or whoever owns them, will be really generous and give us a billboard for a little bit. But how do we get that branding out there and start to bring people around this new idea, and a communications plan of what we're going to do. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but we had some thoughts about that. Just as a reminder, at the conclusion of this year, no agent of the district, that's all of the employees, is allowed to promote the prior mascot. So, at least in their capacity as an agent of the district. So you won't see any of us wearing any of the older branded stuff, which is why one of the things we talked about is how do we get everybody the new branding in some way. Well, we did the math. 1,800 students, 426 staff or so is about $25,000 in t-shirts. Seems like a bit much. So we are going to think about something for branding. And the last thing we talked about is how to memorialize some of the artifacts that we have. We are allowed to, and I don't mean the trophies. Our trophies can all stay. They're all fine. We're allowed to do that. What they did say is, though, you should have something that gives context to, what we were and what we are now. So the idea that we talked about was creating a memorial that tells the story of our consolidation from the dispersed many schools that were in the area to Ravena-Coeymans in the late 40s, early 50s, to Ravena-Coeymans-Selkirk in the late 50s, and then those 70 years we were the Indians and how we became the Indians initially, and then the story of our transition, and we're going to recognize Madeline in that, whatever we create. We were talking about some things from the school district that are meaningful to us that we would like to have in that memorial. We talked about the granite sign that's out front. We talked about, someone came up with one other thing. No one else was on the call. But some other things that we know. Some things from the Historical Society. I just donated some pennants to them. You know what a pennant is? It's one of those triangles. I donated some pennants that were from Ravena-Coeymans and one that was just Ravena that we had. So things like that to show like, here's where we came from and here's where we are. So we're still determining where that'll be. It'll be in the high school somewhere. But we want to, and we have Joe Bulkey, who was our town historian, was on the call, and he was a great help to us. And he will continue to be a great help for us, either with the history of our school and the artifacts. They might be able to help us with some artifacts. Oh, we talked about Letterman letters, varsity letters from the different eras of the schools, which would be really cool to see up there. So even though people are, they're very heartfelt about having to make this change, I think bringing all those memories together will be very special for a lot of people. All right. In your packet here, you have BOCES, our BOCES spending from last year. Sue, did Denise give you something for me to hand out? Jesse talked about how money that we spend, thanks very much, Jeff. Money that we spend through BOCES helps to generate aid in future years. So it's one of the more predictable types of aid that we have. This is a perfect example of that. So you can see here, the BOCES services, the very first line on the front page says 1.3 million generated in aid. So that means that this year, we could predict we would get this $1.3 million. We knew from our spending last year, this is what we'd have, and we have a pretty good sense of the spending that we did this year of how much we'll be getting in next year's budget. For every dollar spent, we get approximately 50 cents. That varies. For some things we get more and some things we get less. And our share of the administrative budget is 2.73. So we pay for their administrative budget as a part of our budget. And you can see we have 65 students enrolled in CTE right now, 5 special education students in programs up there as well. And on the back is a comprehensive list of the services that they provide for us.
Right, is that every student that's interested in the program, being able
Right
to
now.
get in?
Yep.
We have like 72 spots or something?
Yeah, 72. And that's we've budgeted that. Our averaging number is lower right now because during the pandemic we had a precipitous drop. That kind of helped us. BOCES does a 5-year average. So if we had 100, sorry, let me do it easier. 100, 90, 190, 100, our average would be like 96 and a half. Fine. At any rate, they average over 5 years. But the reason for that is if we made a conscientious choice, we said we want to send 80 students next year, and we had 70 there this year, it would only cost us 73. Or 72. We have a ways, so they average every 5 years into the past, and it helps protect us from drastic changes in the cost. The drawback is if we sent significantly fewer kids, we'd still be paying a higher rate.
But there's certain trades that we don't have a lot of spots for, so the interested students go on a wait list.
Oh, you're saying, so what does happen? They get full, like say welding is a very popular program. It is a very popular program, and they're doing some things to help with that. They're building a welding lab in Schoharie, which means that students from Schoharie in that area don't have to go to Albany anymore. That'll help relieve some of that pressure. But what they...
Would we then get some more spots?
Well, obviously,
Potential?
it would open up more spots because those people who can go to Schoharie will go there instead.
Oh.
So in that instance, what they would do is they say, what's your next best? Do you want to do construction systems? Do you want to do electrical? And they try and find a fit for it. But you're right, students do have to make the hard choice sometimes. So at least they are, the improvements they're doing at the Schoharie CTE will help us in Albany because it's going to relieve some of the pressure of the enrollment in the other building.
72 spots, is that CTE and special education or just CTE?
I think they're held separate. So 65 is, so 72 number is our gen ed side.
Okay.
Do you know? Yeah, okay. I think that it is because.
That's fine. I just.
When we've gone through this process before, and we sent kids all the way up to 72 or 70, they were all gen ed.
Okay.
And BOCES comes on site every year. They meet with the 10th graders. They try and get them excited about the program. The counselors are talking about it. And, one of the arguments that we've had is how to introduce this in the middle school. So kids are starting to aim for it sooner. And because there are some criteria they have to meet too. We have a rubric that we use. We share it with 9th graders. And of course, 9th graders are listening to what exactly, hard to say sometimes. But we share it with the 9th graders when they come in. Here's the rubric for 11th grade. You can imagine how cognizant they are, right? But we do share it with them early. It would be better, I think, to be able to marry that into the fabric of here's what you want to aspire to, be thinking about welding, electrical, automotive, diesel mechanics, what would you like to do when you grow up? Here are the things you need to do to get there. I'd love to fill all 72. It's not us. We don't want to restrict students. We want them all to be there. But when we have 100 applicants for the 72 spots, the rubric helps us make better decisions about, you're not coming to work now. What's I going to come to work next year if they're putting you in these CT positions?
I will tell you, those kids who are focused on it, they do.
They are
'Cause
focused.
Let me tell you.
Laser focused. Sorry about that. We had a question about who to contact when last time. And Michelle and I, Michelle has been working like a dog at my directives, trying to remediate the issues we've been talking about. And here's what we've discovered. There are people who are legal guardians or parents who received calls last year or text messages but aren't receiving them this year. So we finally dug down deep enough to figure out why that is. So it really just comes down to the way that numbers are labeled when we create the database. And we are working with both vendors, the one where the information is now in Synergy and where the information is going into our website, so that we're catching the numbers the right way. We sent an email to families today about that, saying that we understand what the problem is. We're going to fix it. We're going to notify you when we fixed it, and then we're going to do a test. We did a test with staff last year to make sure that they were getting the communications they were supposed to. We're going to do the same thing with families. We'll say like, all right, it's A.W. Becker Day. At 3 o'clock today, we're going to send a phone call message to Becker families. At 4 o'clock, we're going to send a text message. And here's who you speak to or you send a message to if you're not getting it. We figure that unless we're closing, there's a lot of mystery, right? We have to wait until the snow day to find out whether we're going to get a phone call. We don't want that anymore. So once we've resolved the issue, we'll do a test and we'll make sure that people who are expecting to get it will get it. And in the meantime, we've encouraged people to please sign up for the app, because all of the emergency communications do come through the app. The thing that doesn't come through it is like 5th grade is going on a field trip, so that goes specifically to 5th grade students. That's, for those individual things, we clearly need people to be in the system the way they want them to be. Are there any questions about that? We talked about this hearings and petitions form at the last policy meeting, and I think we're pretty close. So let me tell you the things that we did, and Ed can help me as well. The front of the card it's the exact same as the front of our card now. The only thing that we took out, and I apologize, I should have left the redaction. You notice in number 2, it says, please reference the back of this card. So it no longer says, don't discuss any personally identifiable information that would ordinarily be talked about in executive session, because no one knew what that meant anyway. And we agreed that if someone filled out the card with their name, they've already divulged personally identifiable information. So we just said, please turn the card over. So really the important stuff's on the back. I moved the paragraphs as you suggested, and included we got rid of one paragraph from Bethlehem and included one that wasn't there, and there they are in succession. And we also agreed that we would keep a copy of the who to contact when up there. So when people came in, they would see it next to the cards. And the last thing was, Michelle already made the correction on the website, which is, how do you contact the board? That was the one thing that was missing. It said, if all this doesn't work, feel free to contact the board in silence. So Sue Starr is your voice. So we put Sue's contact information there as the board clerk, and then she would disseminate the information to the board, as she has, each time she gets information, she shares it. It's a very long path to get to this new and improved hearings and petitions form. Sure.
Is this just meant for like the cards that we keep up there, or is there like a digital, okay.
And
Then-
we would put it on the website as well.
Okay, because I was just wondering if this is only something that's printed, then why we're including what appears to be a link.
Yeah, it'll be on the website. That's why
Okay,
it's like that.
I mean, it might be helpful for us to, I don't know how long the web address is, but if it's a not obnoxiously long web address, it might be helpful to include the actual address of where it is on the website underneath it, instead of what appears to be a link on the paper, so that people know where to find it on the website, but otherwise.
You're saying put the whole link there instead of a hyperlink?
Right, because a hyperlink on a piece of paper.
Yeah, this is copied from the website. This is what will be on the website. That's why there's a hyperlink.
Okay,
So there won't be one in the finished product.
okay, that's all I was looking to clarify.
Yes.
Thank you.
They got to push on it really hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Just so you're aware, for your printed copy, because you probably did it all on one sheet, it says 4, 5, 6, where it should
Oh,
be
yeah, yeah.
repeated 1, 2, 3.
Love it when that
Just so you know to correct that.
No, those are 4, 5, 6. You have to fill out 2 cards. Thank you. I can't possibly have any more.
Thank you for all of that. Jean, you're our next act.
All right. Just a quick update. The Code of Conduct Committee met last week. We did have a postponed meeting, and that's been rescheduled for Monday, February 12th, 3:45 to 5. So just some highlights from the meeting. We had an opportunity to take a closer look at just a section of the Code of Conduct to sort of level or have some foundational understanding about some of the ways that folks were talking about questions or concerns they had about the Code of Conduct in our first meeting, particularly around behaviors and interventions and consequences, and how to use the tool, the Code of Conduct as a tool to sort of select appropriate interventions and consequences based on the students in front of you. We also took a look at 3 different data sets. One was violations and dispositions from the beginning of the year through the end of November that you were able to filter by different subgroups. And there was also a data set around that was just discipline summaries by school, and that only broke out numbers of discipline incidents and male and female, the behaviors. And then finally, there was also some data around the number of restorative meetings that are happening as part of the consequences or follow-up to any behaviors. So we really tried to focus on, and we'll return to this in that last meeting, identifying areas of concern that kind of came out from looking at that data, those data sets, to bring back to the school leaders so that they can have an opportunity to kind of think through that, maybe share some of those highlights with their BLTs, and start thinking about what are some things we might be able to do to address this concern. The other thing we want to do is, by the end of the meeting, have a pretty good sense of the scope of revision that might be necessary for the Code of Conduct, because that would involve creating another subcommittee that would have a longer commitment to doing some work, depending on where we fall with that. And then finally, which is sort of a sub-bullet actually of that, is if we determine that there's significant work that needs to be done, and no matter what, we want to identify the board policies that are already referenced and might need to be referenced in that Code of Conduct. So that's a lot to accomplish in that meeting, but I'm hoping that we can do that by the end and make some recommendations
to move forward. Sure.
Just to let everybody know, and if you're in that meeting, committee meeting I did, at the policy committee meeting, we met with Ryan, with our attorney. And currently, right now, our definitions of bullying and cyberbullying and all that are not in the code of conduct. They're referenced in the code of conduct to see policies. He said, we will be able to, next summer, when we submit the new code of conduct, we will be able to actually put those definitions right in the code of conduct. So the parents won't have to go searching for a policy to find out what the definitions will be. They'll actually be right there for them. So.
Thank you. The other update that I had for you was just some highlights. We had a professional learning half day on February 1st, last Thursday. So there were a number of things that were offered, including there's a core group of folks who are continuing to maintain their TCIS certification. So part of doing that is 10 hours annually. So those folks have been pulled together. We had an opportunity for folks to join our teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, focusing in on positive engagement with students and using ASL, American Sign Language, as a tool for nonverbal cueing rather than talking at kids all the time. Yes.
What is TCIS?
Therapeutic Crisis Intervention System.
Thank you.
It is an approach to de-escalation and working with kids. That's where the emphasis is, and part of the training also does teach folks how to restrain students safely.
Can I ask, is there TCIS full training planned for those who are not?
So right now, I've been working with Kate and Colleen and Tim around selecting a window of time in the summer to invite a new core group to get the initial training, and then they'll be rolled into that ongoing.
Okay, so not during the rest of the
Not
school
during the
year.
rest of the school year.
Okay.
It's tentatively scheduled for right after the end of school right now. That's tentative.
Okay.
But I think it's important to note, though, around this, I would like to continue to provide like, for example, on this October 17th day, Herb Tedford offered just an hour-long session around de-escalation strategies. So he pulled from the TCIS curriculum. So that is great instruction for anybody. You don't have to be fully certified. It's just great reminders of how we interact with kids and what we can do to de-escalate situations. So I just want to keep that. So we'll see that a lot, I think, as part of our SEL, our approach to really addressing SEL needs. We also offered, some of the counselors met with the Synergy team in person to address some building master schedule and working with kids. We also had a drop-in session that was much more, many more people joined it this time. The end of the marking period and changing to a second semester raised a lot of questions with grade books and trying to clear some things up. So it was good to have folks who could actually step in and meet and have someone answer their questions or address them and then get back to them. And then the K-5 teachers did some work around finalizing cumulative assessments for the second trimester and the third trimester, so they're ready to go with those assessments. And then departments met and did a lot of item analysis around midterms and quarterly grades and linking it back to the department goals. So it was a pretty full day. Perfect timing. And then, and just, you know, it has resurfaced a couple of times, and I didn't put it on the shared doc. I updated it after the fact around pre-K staffing, because I know that those questions keep coming, and I'm trying to answer them, and I'm not quite sure if I'm hitting it. But right now, and I can't name the individuals, or if it's a school psych, or if it's a speech therapist, because it's blended, and it is, the roles are playing out differently in each school. But just so the board knows, in order to meet the contractual needs for the classroom teachers, one of the specials is an SEL block. So Deb said tonight, she talked about the second step curriculum. That's one of the things that we're introducing in an SEL block, and either the school psych or the speech therapist is providing that. It's a 45-minute contractual time, but one of the schools has chosen to do it for 45 minutes, and the other school has it split into 2 blocks of 20 minutes with travel time for kids. The other thing is we have built in a push-in support at least 30 minutes per week for each classroom. It might be the school psych, it might be the speech therapist, and that typically happens during center time. And then the rest of what we call is sort of classroom support as needed. And when I met with the pre-K teachers on Thursday, we had a department meeting or a grade level meeting. We talked about how the needs that we saw at the beginning of the year, particularly with these little babies that are coming in, and the management needs and sort of that regulation support was much heavier. They were calling on the school psych more often. So that's more as just classroom support as needed. We started the conversation around, now that we're at a point, and we got feedback from our SED visit around what kind of support might we need as far as tier 1, tier 2 literacy development. Does it make sense to see, and working with the interventionists, to have them come in and do, a letter and sound center that's more reinforced for some of our kiddos who need a little bit more attention for that. And then the other pieces that are filling those roles are preschool evaluations, and that is going to amp up. And we did talk with the teachers about that impacting that as-needed time, because those folks are going to be called out for that. And this CPSE chairperson role. So those are how it's filling those folks' positions.
Is there not someone already in the district who fulfills the role of CPSC chairperson? Is that not a defined position that our district has?
It was, and I don't have it in front of me, it was either Kate or Colleen were running all of those meetings in addition to the meetings that they were running. It was part of the.
So we need 3 full staff or 2.5 full staff to run our CSE, CPSE meetings? Is that what this information is leading you to believe?
I mean, would it be helpful if I just gave you some numbers of how many meetings are actually occurring?
My concern, and I'm going to say that it's me that has these concerns, is that when the UPK program for full day was presented and these 2 positions were presented, I'm fairly certain at the time I expressed my concern about them being utilized for things outside of the UPK program. And if that's the way the positions were defined, I guess that's fine. But my concern is that if we need additional staff to support our special education department or our UPK program, that those things are outlined and addressed in the upcoming budget. I don't want to see that these staff members are being stretched thin or the support is not being given, because early childhood education is extremely important in preventing children from needing services throughout the course of their life. If you shore up their skill sets at the beginning of their career, you're not going to be providing academic interventions to these students for as long, hopefully, if they're being given the support they need and they're getting the services and they're getting everything that they need. I worry if we need 3 people to man those meetings, then why don't we have 3 positions to do that? Why are we pulling the psychologists away from the program that they were destined to be, or were slated to be a part of?
So not being here when the proposal was written or when the conversations were happening about how we would use that staff, just from being outside of that, to have 4 classrooms with that level of support, with a full-time teacher, full-time teaching assistant, and then 2 full-time FTE just for those 4 classrooms, it's a lot of staffing. I absolutely agree with you on early intervention, but it doesn't stop those folks from also working with kiddos in kindergarten and in first grade and as well.
If their time is being utilized like that, then I would like to see that that's explained, because when you state that a position is going to be created for the purposes of UBK and they're being pulled to other locations to run meetings, to create or complete evaluations, and to be utilized in the K-1 classrooms, I don't mind at all. I want the kids to get the support that they need, but I want to make sure that the staff is being utilized properly so that as many kids that need it are getting the support. A lot of times when you have children come into early intervention programs or early childhood programs, you can identify a lot of those needs and they may need additional support, and knowing that at the time and supporting it, it seems crucial, and it was presented that these positions were for this program. And so if the need for that has changed, I think that is important for us to note and to be addressed in the budget.
So what I recall was these positions were proposed as part of UPK,
Correct.
grant-funded positions, and it was described that their primary responsibility would be providing services to the 4 classrooms, and whatever excess capacity they might have when they've already met the needs of UPK could then be allocated to other grades, which at the time was a great proposition, right? If they've sufficiently done everything they need to do to support the UPK program and they have more capacity, they can be used in those other areas. But the majority of their time by far and their primary responsibility should be the UPK program. And if it's not, then that raises a question to me, because those originated through a grant program application for the UPK program. And to me, it doesn't sound like we have clarity on how their time is being spent right now.
Jean didn't mention that for the
Can I-
first time.
Can I ask a question before? You were mentioning Colleen and Kate, that they're so busy that they've had to replace them running some meetings because they're,
I'm making that assessment based
Well,
on the information I'm being given.
there's a
If I'm
guy-
being told their responsibility is to cover meetings, then
yeah.
to me, that means we need additional staff. If they are unable to fill the rest of their role and need someone to cover the meetings, then something needs to change.
Right,
And-
but there's a guy now
Correct.
who I was very surprised to meet, Kate, to be honest with you. I had a meeting with Colleen scheduled, and this guy showed up. I had no idea who this guy was. I still don't know who this guy is. But, I mean, he does have an RCS badge, so I'm assuming that he works in, student support services or whatever, but
Mike, what was the guy doing that you're asking about? What's your
he
question?
was running an IEP meeting for my son.
Was it our instructional coach,
Tim King.
Tim King?
Beats me. It could be. I don't know.
I think we're getting pretty
Yeah.
bogged down right now, some individual circumstances, but
Clarify what you were saying.
Yeah.
Because I know that having been in the building, I do hear your concerns, and I also share those. I wasn't part of the board at that time, but I do know from being in the building that the majority of the preschool CPSE meetings happen more towards the springtime, right? And the psychologists, understandably, are super, super busy in the fall getting the kids adjusted to school. So that time may be able to be allowed. I certainly don't think that they could run meetings during the fall when their time is demanded as much. But with that being a little bit easier, is that what you were trying to say, that they are?
Well, there's going to be a shift in needs. I guess what I'm having when you keep saying, do they have everything they need? I mean, if you ask teachers, they'll say, I'd love to have someone else in my classroom all day. So I want to be able to measure that with how are our kiddos doing? And day to day and academically. And so those are all pieces that I haven't seen any evidence that we aren't meeting the needs of those kids yet.
So what data do we have that supports that we are meeting their needs? Like, what assessments are you using to come to the conclusion that their needs are being met?
I would have to look at year-end data, quite honestly, to tell you, because as you know, the assessments are individualized. The gold assessment is in a booklet, so they haven't captured that data necessarily in spreadsheets for me to take a close look at. So it really is anecdotal. How are our kids doing? What else do you need? Do you feel like they've been supported?
I guess my concern is just, the overall question is, it was presented that they were being hired and needed specifically, primarily to service for the UPK program based on that grant. How much time, I think what we're asking is, how much time are they being allocated outside of those duties? If they're being used for other things, and then when you say, well, teachers will always say, well, they would always need more. Yeah, but they're the ones in the classroom. So I guess who's making the decision as to if teachers are saying, and I have no firsthand knowledge of this, but if teachers are saying, they always say, oh, we could always use more hands-on, who's making the decision then, well, no, they don't, and we're pulling them out and using them for other things? I think what Jenny's saying is, if they were primarily hired for that, we want to make sure that that is their primary responsibility. And if they're being used to cover other positions, maybe in the budget process, maybe we have to look at the fact of hiring somebody else to handle other things. Because if that's what they were hired for, that's the way at least it was presented that I recall. And if we can't provide the numbers, so if we can't say to the board, they're being, okay, out of the classroom, they're being utilized X amount of hours, or here's the data, how much time they're being utilized for stuff that, I don't want to say that they weren't hired for, but outside of that position, we should know that, I would think, right? Because how would we know if they're being utilized efficiently if we don't know how much time they're being utilized in the classroom?
I would like to say that I don't object to their time being utilized for the needs of the district. My overarching concern is there a need for an additional position or role that we need to address to ensure that the continuity of services is being provided? If they're needed more in K1 and then follow them on because the need is greater, I have no objection to that or issue. My issue is the way it was presented, and if the need is large enough, then shifting or changing a position or creating new ones if it's needed. And it's highlighted to me because our budget is coming up for presentation and approval and to be presented, and I want to present to the community, the district at large, something that's going to accommodate and meet all of the needs. And if it's shifting those positions because the need isn't as great, okay, that wasn't the way the position was listed, and I don't know how that affects the grant funding for it, because the way I remember it, they were filtered under that grant. I just want to make sure that when we present a budget, it addresses all the needs that we possibly can. Because that is one of the ways that we can affect change.
Yeah. And I can, if the board is interested in looking at budgeting for adding positions, that is the board, and I'm happy to explore that. I guess what I want to be just mindful of is having an intentional plan about how this support, if we were to add positions, what that would look like. Because I take it back to a K-12 perspective, and there are needs, competing needs all over the district. So what rises to the level of, we're going to take these resources and only use them here? Because what I really do appreciate is how the principals and the teachers have really worked through a system that has built what we needed for teachers contractually, plus more than that, so that they have someone else in the classroom, and met the needs, the district-wide needs. We were cited for not completing preschool evaluations in a timely manner, and that has gone away because we are able to do that now. So like we've successfully, and I don't know, maybe it was a conversation that happened, between my predecessor and the special ed department as far as what we could use those folks for underneath the umbrella of the grant, which is, I think, what happened. And being able to do evaluations and share meetings was something that was really important in order to make sure that we were in compliance as well. And that's all I had.
Okay. Anything further, Jenny, on that?
I guess I would like some circle back to that at the end of the year to determine if the supports that are being provided. And I guess to your point about intentional planning of staff, I don't know, maybe that's something that needs to be looked at larger. If we're fulfilling the holes with these other positions, I just feel like maybe we need to know the intention behind other positions if they're not fulfilling that, and we're I don't know how to explain, I guess, what I'm trying to explain.
I hear you, because I've been in the buildings. I know that, psychologists are pulled to run all the 504 meetings as well as see kids and all that. So I'm sure there is some need for that fill-in, especially with the younger kids. So I hear what you're saying, but there, like you said, there's always need, and there's always,
But I just want to make sure that it's balanced, and maybe maybe pre-K isn't necessarily the area that needs the greater support.
Well, we just
And
need
if
to
that's
be,
the reality, then that's okay, but then where does the additional support need?
we need to be mindful
greatest.
of the purpose for which these positions were created and what we've committed to as part of the grant funding award, right? I mean, these aren't positions that we can just reallocate somewhere else because there's a greater need somewhere else. These are positions for a specific purpose, and we've been funded for that specific purpose. And we need to stick to that. So if there's a need elsewhere, then I think we need to be satisfied that what needs to be happening in the UPK classrooms is happening. All the support needed has been satisfied there, and if there's any additional capacity, it can be given elsewhere. And if that's not enough, do we need to have a budget discussion about what would be enough? But again, I mean, we can't just say, there's another grade level that has a greater need, so we're going to reallocate these positions to that grade level. We can't do that under the funding award that we have.
You just file an amendment to the grant, and you can do it. That's
File an
Are you
amendment
saying that
removing
we could
the
amend
core
the
component
grant?
of the-
Anything other than pre-K.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't,
So are we in compliance
we
with
would
the
have to look
Yes,
at that.
because I did not put full-time positions. I couldn't, because as I
don't
explained
know.
at the beginning of the year, we didn't get as much money as we had anticipated. The second grant, we got the full amount, but they reduced what we used to get from UPK based on their calculations, which I cannot explain to you. So,
Unexplainable.
I probably can't explain them either.
so I was not able to put those two positions in fully under the grant.
So
So
there
what
is a little
portion
bit
is
of,
not under the grant?
I don't have the number, I don't have it in front, but it isn't full-time.
Okay, so they don't necessarily have to be full-time
They
there
do not have
as a
to,
result of
no,
the grant.
to be in compliance with the grant, no, I was very careful about that when I was doing the
Okay.
application.
But there is some threshold that they need to satisfy
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be in compliance.
yes.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Jesse?
I think you've heard enough of me tonight, but I will, I will go quickly. We had a building grounds, a meeting this afternoon. I just want to hit some highlights on there, some of the capital projects, and give you quick updates on that. And if other board members want to step in, feel free. I am happy to say that the Peter B. Playground Committee has selected a design, and we placed the order this afternoon. So hopefully, weather and all the other stuff that can come up, we will see it installed by late spring or early summer. So, yeah, I'm excited, my family's excited too. So, so that's, yeah. An update on the $2.3 million project. The concession stand press box, I don't know if people have probably seen it, it looks great. All the roof is complete, the window's complete, some of the other panels are complete on it. The drywall on the inside is complete. We are just finishing up some of the fixtures on the inside. Bill showed some pictures on the inside at our committee meeting, and it does look great. It really lightens everything up. The dugouts and the fencing, the dugouts, the prep, if you can see at the high school, they're starting to lay down the prep work for those dugouts. And they also, what was that? There's high school and at Peter B.
Oh, okay, okay.
Both sites. The prep work down there. And they did start working on the fencing at Peter B today. So they're expecting to have the dugouts and all the other fencing completed by March 15th. So plenty of time for baseball season. The $100,000 project, which is the middle school water heaters. The demolition of the old one is 90% complete, and the new units are set in place, and they will be finishing that up with the final piping over February break. So that will be done after that. For the $15 million one, or the project, the big project that we have planned for this coming summer, we've met a lot with the construction manager and our architects a few times about the timeline. Unfortunately, we got some bad news that SED is going to take longer than we expected. The times that we heard in the beginning of the year have escalated. So we're hoping to get the designs back by early to mid-April. And then after that, we can go out to bid and start the projects. And that's all I have tonight.
All right, thanks, Jesse. Does anybody have any new business items? Yeah, no?
It's brought to my attention that our current absence letter that's sent home has some very unfavorable wording. And I discussed it. It should be a fairly easy thing to change, but it currently says that all excused and unexcused absences will not be tolerated. And to a kindergarten parent receiving that letter after having a sick child for a month, it was very disheartening to a couple of parents that I spoke with. And so if we could visit changing that letter, maybe just taking out the reference to the Board of Ed policy, which is the unfavorable sentence. The rest of it is great, and that would be my.
Ironically, I was looking through the letters for the middle school and high school today. I couldn't find that language in them.
Okay.
So it's just the kindergartners.
Apparently, we're only
Thumbs down
torturing
on.
kindergarten parents.
We're looking at all the letters, ensuring that it has the correct letterhead, it's the right formatting, and the language is appropriate. That's not even appropriate for a middle school or high school. The high school letter talks about potential of losing credit, it talks about other remediations, and the board policy talks about our process. If a student gets to 7, 14, 21, and 28 days of what we're supposed to follow. So the letters don't need to say that. It's not okay. That was a robot that made that letter.
Yes,
and sent
apparently.
it out. We're going to put that robot to sleep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for mentioning it the other day to me too, Mel.
Anything else? Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of loop back. I know we had talked about it a little bit when we had done our board retreats for the mission and vision statements. But I want to make sure that we are still addressing and kind of, really taking a serious look at the responses that were submitted through the community survey. There was a lot of information that was provided to us, and I think a lot of it could be very productive and helpful and things. Obviously, there were some comments that were, I believe someone actually said meh, to go back to our previous one. There's a lot of information in there, though, and, we have a lot of people who took the time out of their lives to fill out a very long survey and give us some very thoughtful feedback, and I just want to make sure that we are, doing something to make sure that we are really tackling those, that the appropriate committees are, able to review it. I know all of us had the opportunity to review it, but in those committees, there are certainly things that could be brought to buildings and grounds, to the policy committee, to the code of conduct committee meetings and things like that. And I just want to make sure that we aren't just, I know we took a very high level view of all of that information to feed into our conversations, but there's a lot of information there. I want to make sure that, when we are asking people for that feedback, that we are actually using it.
Yeah, that's a great point, and selfishly, I want to see that happen because I promised over 200 teachers today that we were going to do something with that feedback, and we should, right? It's not, we collected it for a specific purpose, right? For the vision, mission, goal statement work, but it's useful far beyond that. So we do need to come up with a game plan on how we're going to use that information, how we're going to feed it to the
Right, I mean, I think that our committees are probably the best place to really address things, but, you know, I mean, I made an attempt at starting to sort of filter those down by the way that I would think the committees that we have, but of course, there's a lot of information there, and I myself have not gotten through all of it. But, you know, I mean, I think the responses need to be in some way sort of categorized of like, these are things that, you know, buildings and grounds really need to hear. These are things that curriculum and instruction really need to hear. So that when we're looking at things and when we're looking to make change and updating things, that, you know, all that great feedback that we've collected, that we're really putting to use.
What Mike actually said today, in one or more, I know at one juncture you said it, was that those survey results would continue to be used in establishing the objectives. So those committees that I talked about, it's sensible for them to use that to say, when we say we're going to have more meaningful communication with our communities, we need to know what the concerns were about communication. So we will continue to use it.
Okay, I mean, I would love to see it that it's broken down in some way that kind of, you know, sort of splits it up to the different committees to make sure that there's not anything that's, you know, that we're not just saying that we're taking that all into consideration, that we have it kind of in our back pocket while we're thinking about these things, but that someone is actually really, you know, reviewing those. You know, certainly people have brought some concerns, some people have brought some very positive feedback. And I just want to make sure, you know, individual concerns obviously need to be addressed as a side, but there are certainly themes to a number of concerns that people have brought, and a number of things that people think that we could maybe do better. You know, we asked for where we could improve. And, you know, there's certainly a lot of great ideas on there of ways we really could, of different things we could offer and different ways we can offer things. So, you know, I would really love to see that those are really broken down in a way that any meaningful comments, not the ones where people just, you know, said, I don't know, that those are really broken down and given to the committees to address in the ways that they can.
Thank you.
Possibility of the communications committee coming back together?
The what?
The communications committee? So I think
Yeah,
we did a lot of great work, and then it's been about a year.
It's a reasonable extension of the, trying to hit that mark, right? And I was thinking, I was breaking those up. There was the social emotional and communication and academics. I was trying to figure out where they all sit nicely. That's a good place for where communication could land. We need to ensure that had a robust, diverse group because communication is so multifaceted from the classroom all the way up to board. So it's a good idea, Mel.
Well, now we can just be board members on the committee instead, Mel. Now we can just be board members on the committee instead.
Yeah.
Perfectly suited. There's that demographic. And parents and PTA and PTO, yeah.
I mean, we still
That's
have
it,
those
3.
roles.
It's gonna be a 3-person
Take it
committee.
all out.
We're gonna nail it.
All right, moving into old business, we can scratch the first 2 items there. So those are both sub-pay rates, that's resolved, right? With tonight's resolution.
Part of our
Yep.
new subbing plan.
Okay. So those are scratched. We've already got an update on the playground. Meet to set goals, mission, vision. That part of that item can also be scratched. Let's keep the playgrounds on there just so we can track the ongoing updates there. Does anybody have anything to discuss on the remaining items? Okay. Ted, you've had a lot of time to think about what you want to say tonight.
Well, no, I'm hemorrhaging stuff. First of all, I really appreciate every single person at this table. It's weird what people don't know when they're not here, but it is 8:30 and it's been a very long day for everybody. And you guys aren't just here, but you're having like important conversations about serious things. And I can't tell you how nice it is to know, as a dad of 3 kids in the district, as a teacher, taxpayer, as a union president, just knowing you guys are here chopping wood into the, you know, the wee hours. It's really impressive. So thank you all for doing this work, often thanklessly. Just a few things real quick. I want to just remind us all that 2 years ago, Brandon Herwick was acknowledged here for the Teacher of the Year, and that was just so wonderful to see. So I just wanted to shout that out again. Him acknowledging his colleagues and mentors and administrators was just wonderful. That's like what we come here for. It was wonderful to see. Also, real quick, seeing that Craig Lips was resigning was just made me crestfallen when I saw that in the agenda. He did so much in such little time with us. The nightmare of bus cancellations over the last few years feels like a distant memory, but it's because of his work and some other things that got rectified very, very well. Nothing's perfect, but it was a great job. I'm glad Jesse's here to, paper over his absence for a while until we fill that position with somebody who can, I'm sure, do it just as well or at least close. Thanks to all the board members for showing up at our schools today. It feels like such a simple thing, but again, it's just nice to know you're engaged in there and listening and are taking it seriously. You said you can't do it without us. You wanted us to get buy-in. I'm telling you, we can't do it without you, right? We're committed to this profession. We show up every day. We try our darndest to move the needle every day, and we can't do it without your support. So it's so nice to see that coming in. Just real quick on that, we got this budget season right now. We're in the thick of it. And as Jesse shared, the numbers aren't great. And I would just be remiss if I didn't just, water the seed I think I planted a little bit ago about what we value when we have to make hard choices. And we might have to make hard choices coming up here. I don't know. I hope we don't. I hope the legislature will give us some more cash. I'll be lobbying with NYSA to try to make them to do just that. I'm sure the School Board Association administrators are doing that too. We can't do this without some money to spend, so I hope we get more. But in the event we don't, and we got to make hard choices, I don't envy anybody here for having to make them. But I would just be remiss if I didn't remind us all that what we're doing here happens between students and teachers in a room. And we need to make real sure we're preserving that kind of sacred space and exchange. We've got COVID funding drying up as well. The COVID gaps are not going anywhere, right? They're right here. And in order for us to help close those gaps, we need the small class sizes. We need teaming. We need to, if possible, expand services in other sectors. And it's going to be hard to do this year. It's going to be really hard to do. But I just need to water that seed again, and I'm sure I'll water it again as we get deeper here in the school year. But this is a really important thing I hope you all are taking seriously as we go through this. So thanks again. Now on to Hamlet.
Thanks,
Never
Ted.
mind.
Time's
Good night.
up.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. We're going to need a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing collective negotiations under Article 14 of the Civil Service Law.
First.
Motion by Ed, second by Jenny. All in favor? Aye. And we will be taking no further action when we return.